welcome everybody to our Sales Enablement Best Practices show. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Mark?
I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. And hey, this is Sales Enablement Society, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Glad to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bill Ball from Vorsight. I do sales enablement and training and talent here.
Juliana Stancompiano. I'm the CEO of Oxygen, based out in Seattle, founded it in 2008, and have been around and in the sales enablement industry since then.
Britton Manasco. I am the head of a company here based in Austin, Texas called Visible Impact, the author of a book called Next Era Selling, and I'm pleased to be joining you today.
So let's start with subject number one, best practices for onboarding salespeople. Bill, tell us about Vorsight. How many salespeople do you have?
We have about 30 on the Vorsight side, and then on the Exec Vision side, it's a smaller team of about 5.
Right. How many do you onboard during the course of a year?
Lots. This is an entry-level sales position, so we're not only teaching people, product and service and so forth, but the entire world of sales. We're building their entire world, and they don't even know if for sure they want to do it for the rest of their lives. So I onboard. I would say it's easily. I've probably in the past couple of years, it's easily been 100.
Britton, you're next. Onboarding. What is the proper process for onboarding?
People have to be onboarded in the ways of the company, in the nature of the products and the solutions. But one thing that's often given short shrift is orientation to the customer set and the challenges they might be experiencing in the absence of those solutions. Because at the end of the day, they're going to buy because they've got a problem, they've got a need, they've got a sense of urgency, and people really have to be developed and trained and oriented to go out and sell the problem, as one famous wag said, offer the solution. And I think there's this tendency to lock people up in rooms and present too much, too little, too early, too late.
I think there are practices, and there are ones that work, and there are ones that don't work, and there are ones that work for some people, and there are ones that work for others. That being said, I think onboarding is amazing. I think it's such an amazing time when somebody joins an organization, and it's like we get them at their most excited, and we just ruin them in most cases. I think, to Britton's point, and we're so good at it. It's amazing, and a lot of what we see or hear is information overload. We have one company that we worked for that after talking to some of the salespeople, they were receiving 50 emails from their enablement department, and they all had mandatory trainings in them that they had to go through. 3 were platforms, and the other 47 were just random acts of training. And what were people doing? None of it. Salespeople were like, I don't know where to start. This is super confusing. It's overwhelming. I am just going to go and search for the information that I need, and I'm going to go start talking to customers. And I look at that and think about all the money that a CEO has invested in creating those 50 random acts of training, and it makes me want to cry. In my mind, it's that they don't even know that they're going through an onboarding or a learning experience. They're just getting what they need as they need it, and able to find it and be able to do their job and be successful. Because in my mind, we're here. Why are we here? Help people be successful in their role, help them drive numbers if they're in the sales, and help them grow the business.
So you're bringing the conversation to the why. Why are we doing this? And keeping the end in mind helps us humanize the process, and then think about onboarding from the perspective of the learner who really wants to make a contribution. Mark, when you started your sales career, think back, share how you were onboarded.
80% of all onboarding just goes right over the head because the person's so overwhelmed. I think the number one best practice is creating that one-to-one relationship, teaming that new salesperson up with a veteran, experienced person who then becomes their mentor and their peer and shepherds them through not just through the first week or two, but really through the first 6 or 8 months, navigating the culture in the organization, understanding the customer. It's that one-to-one connection that I think is absolute best practice. It worked for me and I loved it. And when I was leading a sales force, a large sales force, that was absolutely mandatory. Everybody got matched up with somebody.
So Bill, what happens in your company? Let's say I would join tomorrow. What are you going to tell me the first day?
First of all, that you're going to be surrounded by millennials, so deal with that. But I wanted to tie back in potentially your question with something that Juliana mentioned, and that's the why part of it. We used to have a training business, and we've since spun that off. But what they saw when they would go, they delivered a smaller version of a similar training that I deliver to all of our new people. What they would see is whether it was 2 months long, we've talked about boot camps a little bit, 2 months long or a week long or 2 weeks long or whatever it was an opportunity for the product marketing team to dunk people into every square inch of service and product that existed ever. And there's numerous things wrong with that. But from my perspective and sales development reps, their goal is to have peer-to-peer conversations with senior executives. Many years they're senior, many positions they're senior. It's a magic trick. It's a magic trick that our people do every single day, but it's a magic trick nonetheless. So the last thing that they need is to get down in the weeds and understand products that aren't even viable anymore. So we start with why. We make it experiential. We raise a concept. We attack the why once everybody's understanding. Then we go try it. And we build iteratively, and usually by the second or third day, somebody's like, hey, what happens when blah, blah, blah. And I get to say, it's so funny you mentioned that, because that's the next thing we're about to work on. So that tells me logical progression of thinking. I think a lot of people with a maturity model have a decent boot camp, or I would hope. I'm sure Juliana discovers a lot of other things. And Mark has probably experienced a lot of other things, but it's after that is what really matters, because everybody, you can figure out really quickly who's drinking the Kool-Aid at that point. And it's after that, it's what's happening after that that truly matters. And how do you become a chief repetition officer in sales enablement or training to continue reinforcing all of the things they learned in their boot camp? I think those are the key things. And then refining what that learning model looks like over time. And how do you incorporate it socially? How are peers learning from each other? And I've thrown enough potential topics out of here, so I'll zip it.
Bill, what is a chief repetition officer? Is that you or the salesperson?
It's definitely me, but it's anybody who is a peer leader or a leader in our business has to be a chief repetition officer about everything: skills, clients, you name it, best practices. Where that may fit from organization to organization. I'm in agreement with Juliana about that just being as a general term kind of a no-no.
Britton, I see you taking notes, and I was wondering how you process this from a message perspective.
I think, people are, they come to things voluntarily. And so we have to treat them as adults who are voluntarily deciding to join our organizations and commit their lives for some period of time to our venture. And I think that means, we've got to start thinking smartly about how to do these quote unquote boot camps, or find a better metaphor for it. One thing I would say in best practice is it's called flipping the classroom. And this has been talked about at all levels of learning, which is if you're going to convene, you're going to get people together in a room, well, make it a workshop. Make it a hands-on learning experience. Don't make it an experience where people sit in butts on seats listening to sages on stages. Enable this kind of opportunity where you're going to convene to make things happen, where people are going to learn, and they learn through doing. Take advantage of that, but give them homework assignments. That's flipping the classroom. It's not that they can't do their self-study and come to the event prepared, but do that. Give them a homework assignment before, give them a homework assignment after, and evaluate their progress as they going forward, because this is not just onboarding, it's an ongoing process.
We have this view that we're adults and we give them something or we tell something, and like these stages on stage, which I kind of love that Britton said, that was awesome. Is like this, like, now that I've said it, you can go do it. Please go do that. And that somebody's going to be able to take back that amazing knowledge that somebody else has and just start implementing it and be amazing at it, which is wholly unrealistic in my mind. I can tell you about a lot of things that I've messed up first before getting semi-right in my life and at work. And I wonder why we don't have the same empathy for people going through enablement, experiences and getting them to do it. And also, how do we get them to be able to do it just in their regular job and start, especially in onboarding? It's like, hey, you're going to have to set up this meeting. This is what the meeting looks like. Here are the people that need to be in it. Here's an agenda. Go set that up and run it. Let us know how it goes, and gather that feedback. But I'm also just curious to know about the time that we allow people to learn.
So how do you know that they're ready, that they're enabled?
There's lots of ways to measure this. And it depends on what their expectation is at the beginning of their journey. Are they on a journey to become something else or move into another role, or are they just trying to get good at their job? Because those are two different mentalities and two different levels of measurement. But what I'm getting to about the digital side of things is many organizations hopefully have KPIs figured out, right? The activities, if you want to break up the pieces of a salesperson's job, the activities that they do, the things that are most in their control, the objectives that they're trying to achieve, which are partially in their control, and then the actual results. We've got KPIs nailed, and understand what inputs equal what outputs. Where we're trying to pave a way is what qualitative skills yield the outputs.
I want to zoom back for a second to put another point on the cherry on top, which is that when I was onboarded for a French construction equipment manufacturer in Paris, the sales VP told me, hiring is like dating and onboarding is like building a marriage. And their onboarding process was very simple. They said, you got to love the product. You got to love the company. You got to love the customer. It's typical French, but they put me in a seat of that construction machine, and I worked with an operator. I learned how to grease the machine, and I worked with customers and saw what those machines were doing on the customer job side. And then I was brought into the factory and I watched the machine being built and talked to the engineers. So I gradually fell in love with the entire onboarding process because every week there was a new discovery. And then I was so eager to learn, how do we sell this? Once I knew all those steps. So we need to think about how to get salespeople to fall in love with your company, with your product, with your service, and with your customers. Does that make sense, Mark?
That is a much bigger issue than we don't give it enough respect in the US business culture, because it truly is. Sales is such an emotional game. And if you're not in love with the customer, in love with the outcome, how will you ever sell a product? So that's spot on what that French company did for you. That's great.
Thank you. Let's shift the conversation and let's focus on the challenges that come with digital transformation. And to lead us off, Britton, what is your vision? Where are you on the sort of learning curve, transforming digitally where everything is going to be digitized?
There's this fascination with digitizing everything. And let me just play the skeptic, the curmudgeon a little bit, and suggest that maybe this is kind of our era's re-engineering or e-business. What probably needs to be recognized a little bit more, and let's take it back to the sort of sales front, is the real human interactions and interplay associated with this. So digital technology and processes can enable us, can streamline processes. But at the end of the day, this work can be done by bots. by robots if we're not bringing the human element. And I say the human element in terms of the face-to-face, human-to-human. And when I say, we can be virtual, we're virtual here, but it's personal. We're seeing each other. We're looking in each other's eyes. And we've got to bring that human element across the digital networks. We've got to bring that human element across our companies and our supply chains. All that has to happen, and that shouldn't get lost in this digital transformation drumbeat.
So would you rather buy a car where you have to sign like 40 times, or do it with a digital signature and spend only 3 minutes on it?
I would do it with the digital signature, but I'd love to talk to somebody who's going to share with me the vision of why this car is going to answer my needs, my objectives, my concerns. I'd like to look them in the eye. I may not have to go to the dealership, but I'd like to look them in the eye and have that conversation.
You're saying that the trust comes from looking in people's eyes, and all the rest of the knowledge can be digitized.
But let's have human-to-human conversations, and we can do it at scale, because I don't have to get in a car to participate on your great show.
Juliana, what's your take? Isn't digitalization part of the oxygen that you're delivering to companies?
And I find that fascinating, a little bit to your point, Gerhard. Yeah, I'd rather do a digital signature any day. And I would think that would make me more productive. Seems counterintuitive, right? So, and then on the other side, we heard a speaker from Accenture talk about, hey, in order to progress with technology, we've got to take the unhuman out of our organizations and make them more human. And I believe that's a lot of what we're seeing. Technology is amazing. It does amazing things. And there are still people, and we still like to interact as people. And we need to remember that we're all human. And how do we make our conversations and our interactions more active versus, I think technology has made a lot of our interactions very passive.
There are businesses now that take all the crazy data that you have and actually make it actionable because people can't figure out what to do with it, or they don't have the time, or they don't realize they have the time. So it's interesting, but I will say that I'm with everyone who has spoken before. I think sales still have to involve a conversation. Even in the other part of my business that uses conversation as game film, and that allows us to do amazing things in the onboarding process. We're seeing other people take that same kind of technology and make it so artificially intelligent that, at some point, are we saying that we could write a better conversation through AI than a salesperson could conduct with another human? I'm not sure about that. The challenge with salespeople and getting drowned and all that stuff is part of the onboarding. Part of everything else we've been talking about is how are you leveraging all of the data that you're getting, and did you not believe in science before you started working here? Because guess what? You're going to believe in it now.
And I see a lot of sales enablement people now saying, why don't we cut down on some of the apps that run on Salesforce, because they're not helping us improve productivity, that they're not helping us humanize the organization. They're not helping us close more sales. As a matter of fact, Jim Dickey and his organization found that the ability to close sales has gone down over the last 5 years with more technology. And where every sales technology vendor says, our solution can help you free the salesperson's time so they can spend more time face-to-face with customers. And I've heard that pitch for 10 years, and it doesn't happen. So the question is, why is technology such a double-edged sword? And how should sales enablement managers think about technology so we can optimize everything?
Well, I would just say one interesting factor is in this sort of freemium SaaS era, it's easier than ever to put distractions and options and shiny, silver bullets in front of people. And it creates a lot of havoc, even within a work environment, because anybody can sort of invite, the camel's nose under the tent, and everybody's vying for, look at how cool this is. No, look at how cool this is. It's a really strange phenomenon, and the managers have to sort it out. And I'd say they keep saying we're suffering from tech fatigue.
More becomes less because of all the digitization of everything. We have more, and it really makes us less productive.
But why are we so fascinated with technology? I remember when Dreamforce started, the first Dreamforce had like 360 people, and now they're expecting 150,000.
It's access, Gerhard. It's access, and this is an old trope at this point, right? But the buyer's journey of access has changed, and they have access to just as much, and in some cases more, depending on the industry and the organization, information to solutions as the salesperson does. So the salesperson's no longer an educator. I suppose they can be a challenger, right? But they're no longer an educator. And it's challenged everyone not only to be mired in all of the different channels of communication, right? Hey, have you tried communicating with your prospects over Twitter and see if you can cast a really wide net and see if anybody follows you? You know, like there's so many different channels at this point. And then there's also just being able to get to the buyer's basic business challenges with that buyer being way more educated.
Everybody has FOMO, fear of missing out. I've got to have this app. I've got to have this. 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 And it's the way customers look at things. That's why we wind up with so many no decisions. Well, they looked at it. Nope. FOMO, I think, destroys more business opportunities than we will ever realize in terms of productivity and sales.
Do you think that the rate of change in technology has outstripped our capacity to adapt?
Absolutely. And we don't have a framework. We don't have a perspective yet. We don't have a point of view on how to think through these solutions. And I think that's what we're going to be going through in the next few years, is trying to get that kind of shared and established framework for how to make these decisions on what matters and what doesn't, how to prioritize what does and what doesn't. I think some companies have figured that out. More have not.
Solutions. I think there's a lot of solutions that are coming to market that are looking for a problem to solve. But we'll come out with a solution. We don't know what the problem is, but we got a great solution.
Well, I get those calls weekly from people with accents from all over the world, and they're very, very bright people, and they have technology, and they have brilliant ideas, but they don't understand sales. And that's how Salesforce.com has come to 2,948 application solutions for sales organizations. So when you go to Dreamforce, it looks like a technology flea market where you don't know what fits what and how does it all fit together. So I think it would be a good idea for sales enablement leaders to look into that so that the paradigm will shift, that apps are not going to be designed by some people in the back office that have a lot of big brains and they're very creative, but that supply and demand meet and say, this is what we need. Look at the sales enablement platform. Look at the tool, Sales Enablement Society platform. Is that the best tool that exists out there? Bill, you're the funny guy. What do you have to say about that?
Juliana laughed first is what I have to say about that.
First of all, I think that we're rotating the conversation to think that technology, that they have the answers versus why aren't we saying that we're going to go out and talk to customers and ourselves and let's come up with the right needs and let's gather our requirements. I've done this with a couple technology companies lately and it's fascinating. It's like, no, I don't want it to do that. Nope, don't want it to do that either. That looks amazing, not necessary. But if it can do X, Y, and Z, totally will use it. And I think we just have to take, the power back from the technology. I feel like we're letting technology run us instead of us running technology. And I just don't understand why we're even having that conversation.
Alexa, what's the solution?
Actually, my kids say that Siri's smarter than Alexa.
Whoa!
I think it's buy more Amazon. I think it's buy more Amazon stock. Isn't that what Alexa says?
I want to go back to what Juliana said, and then we need to wrap it up. And there should be a better relationship between supply and demand. And I don't understand why people call me, because I'm only one brain, and I know it's not big enough to understand all the complexities involved in sales technology. And I wish those people went to a committee of, let's say, 10 sales or 12 sales enablement experts, and have them be sort of the people that give them advice and say, this is where you should go, or this is where you go off road. And you're going to risk all the money that the people that trust you have invested in you. So there has to be a better way.
Gerhard, you're not alone. I would say this is part of the mission of the Sales Enablement Society.
Right. Bill, you started out with something funny, so end us with something.
I just hate the term thought leader. I think any ditto head can jump on LinkedIn and suddenly become a thought leader. And people have gotten hired over that. And I'm sure they've gotten fired too. But like, I cannot imagine the amount, just as a complete side note, I cannot imagine the amount of job creation that ditto heading has, thought leadership on LinkedIn has done. I think conversation leadership is fantastic. I mean, this goes back to what we were starting at the beginning of the conversation with onboarding. How many of the people that conduct onboarding or have designed these programs have gone through their own onboarding? There isn't, like, there's so much rush that, getting back to the capitalism, I'll try to tie all this together for you guys. There's so much rush with getting a product to market. And I was just listening to a podcast about what fires you should totally ignore for your customers when you have a brand new product. And like, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy the risk that these people take to try to be first with something. So that's why we've got the app problem. There's no, we can go Ori Brafman and go white space, right? There's no white space, but people aren't taking the time to be accountable or reflect. And that certainly can get driven by conversation.
Britton, final word.
I think my takeaway on this is that we're making progress. I mean, people often feel very confused and lost, and we're making progress. We're finding a way together, and we're working together to do that. And nobody's an island alone. Gerhard, you're not the only one trying to bring markets together and make conversations happen and lead conversations. It's happening, and it's accelerating. So there are counter forces to the confusion. And I think that's all very positive and uplifting. And that's the spirit in which I take these things.
Thank you, Britton. I love your positivity. Juliana?
I appreciate being able to have the conversation with everybody. I think it's awesome. I will say from what Britton just said, I know that when I'm confused, which tends to be a lot, and I don't know the answer, which is also a lot, I know I'm going to learn something. And I find that so fascinating. And I think, in all the confusion that we're all kind of sitting in and sales enablement is in, I wonder if we just embrace that and I don't know the answer, and I'm kind of confused, but through that, there's going to be some clarity. And I think it's awesome that we're all in this together to figure some of that out.
And also thank you for declaring best practices as obsolete. Mark?
Alexa and Siri are here to help us find the solution. But you know what? It's going to be our own intellect that really has to identify the problem first. We need to spend more time identifying the problem before we jump to a solution.
Thanks, everybody. Tune in next Wednesday at 1 p.m. And if you like this, click the like button. And if you find it interesting, please share with everybody. Thanks, everybody.